Right, Melbourne preview time, and we're very honoured to have a special guest from the deep south, Launceston indeed. Are you in Launceston, Dave?
I am.
Um, a place that is dear to my heart because I spent, well, I'll say formative years. I was around the joint from the ages of 2 to 4. So I don't remember a lot, but my sister is currently domiciled in the southern parts of Tasmania. But more importantly, Dave, you are an up and coming form guru. You've attracted a huge following on Twitter, and your thoughts are certainly well regarded. Of course, our Melbourne pro, Aaron, is here to talk about, along with Dave, Caulfield, 12 metres.
Mm.
Um, a what promises to be a sort of unpleasant day on the track. Um, the forecasts I've seen suggest that there'll be sprinkles of rain between race.
They're very key to the day. Obviously, you referenced 12-metre rail. We've got similar winds to last time around this 12-metre rail where there was a northerly, northwesterly, and it really impacted the racing. From memory, I think there was only one leader that went above standard to the 400 that was still in the finish. It was virtually impossible to lead. The wind has sort of backed off a little bit to what was predicted. It might die off
But it's
by
coming
race
from
time.
sort of not quite the opposite direction, but isn't it? It's actually coming.
It could swing. This is the thing. It's changed around a few times now. It's saying it might be a westerly. So, like, the wind is key. The rain is key as well. We've gone from this morning expecting 7.5 mils during the races to potentially only 4. Bomber doing the usual each way bet 1 to 9. This will be one that you need to adjust for heavily on the day. You need to go in with sort of your A plan, but have prepped sort of a B and C plan if rails off.
What are you factoring into your thoughts for Saturday?
Going in neutral with the rail outside 10 metres at Caulfield, they can slingshot into the wider lanes, and they're the better lanes at Caulfield. So certainly, if there is any rain, I'd be looking for them to edge off the inside, and I would be keen that back and wide might not be such a disadvantage.
Be thinking,
If
would I actually want to be in the back half of the field? Certainly, I can see the attraction of wide.
It really depends. If the ground is no good on the inside, it doesn't matter, does it? But if they are sort of kicking off the turn, then yeah, you're going to need to be sort of midfield at worst.
Yeah, I sort of agree with that. Like the could make it really hard to, as much as you don't want to lead, I don't think you want to be settling Western midfield.
I could only find 12-metre rails in the last couple of years at the midweeks, but one of them was the middle meeting between Guineas and Caulfield Cup Day, wasn't it?
That twilight meeting, whatever it was, yeah.
There was a twilight meeting in
Oh
December
no,
that
it was
the
a
rail was
Monday
out.
actually, wasn't it? Yeah.
But anyway, 2 years ago, I did find an 11-metre rail. Now, race one is a 1,000-metre 2-year-old race. We don't seem to have them in Sydney anymore. And Blue Renegade is $3.30, Husk is $4.80, Supervised $5.50 and $6. First Settler, Supervised and Blue Renegade from mid to wide draws look to be the speed. Is that the case, Aaron?
Yeah, I'd expect the two that go forward, Supervise obviously led on debut, and the obvious one. Really, it's sort of been a little bit bulletproof, this prep. Even going back to debut when it set outside Rich Dotty, that was a pretty good run. And then it's, bumped into Interest Point, speed at once, ran second to it as well. But there's a couple of horses, like Husk is coming through that race. I know Kaz was keen on it that day, but you wanted to be up on speed at the Hillside deck, which Blue Renegade sort of got away with. And then there's a debutant down the bottom here, first. Hey Sugi, and jumped out just as well as it. And then had a few more, was supposed to line up, I think it might have been Caulfield last year, and they drew one and just decided to tip it back out. And they've given it another couple of jump outs, which have been really positive. It's got some nice early speed as well. So given it's drawn outside of Blue Renegade, it's one that might be able to sort of tuck in and just slot straight across as well. I think it's got ability. It's one I'm looking forward to.
Minutes before the race on the Melbourne Pride channel. But if you're a businessman, what do you do about these sorts of races? This is a race on the card that I spent the least amount of time on because I knew Blue Renegade would be sort of at the top of the market, and I knew probably wouldn't be taking Aaron on, although what I will say is that they will have to be pretty good. This run first prep for Blue Renegade, but all four runs have been around the sort of threshold that I use to determine sort of future wins as an older horse. And so on his debut, he put his hand up to say, I'm going to win more races, and has done that. So, and well supported early, I think, for 450 into 320 now. So,
across my career, because I'm not a real trial watcher either. I know that trial pervs abound, and I certainly don't even think to try and compete with them. My approach to first start has got a lot to do with which yards they come from, because trials aren't races. So generally it's about connections rather than what they actually do in the trial. Looks a bit more exposed. It's an 1100 metre race for fillies and mares. And Wave Rider Boy is still yet to determine whether it's at Rose Hill or Caulfield. Kin is $4.20, Mrs. Chrissy $5.50, Miss Icelandic $6.50, Wave Rider Boy $7.50, South of Houston $8.50, and Jenny Pending $9. 3 bits of speed I found, Aaron, Miss Icelandic, Mrs. Chrissy, and South of Houston. How do they line up?
Run race. I remember we said there was a stack of leaders in that race, and drawing 8 didn't really have to come across. It could sort of sit in that lane. So yeah, Mrs. Icelandic's first up for a new yard. It's jumped out really well. It's a proven fresh horse. This distance suits, and generally when you've got a proven fresh horse first time with a new trainer, they're going first up. They want to get a result. Mr. Chris was really good. One of the few horses easily, but it's known to put in a really poor one as well. Wave Rider Boy was an interesting one for me, where it got to with the map, and just watching that last start replay, I don't think it was entitled to finish that close, given the tempo and sort of the way that the track was playing. But when I saw Chief Conductor coming from behind it, it's sort of never done anything first up in its life, and it was sort of finishing 2 to its 1 as well. I thought, maybe it's just
right. You watched that before the Black Cloud round, of course. It's a funny one.
The head scratcher.
Yeah. Kin, which is open up well, it opened up $6, which was a bit bizarre, but it's your current favourite now. It's a bit of a track and trip specialist. As much as it's only won one race, I think it's tend to have done its best racing here. And I spoke about Ranting's jump out last week, and I said, you know, it was a bit funny. Haven't seen a horse ridden like that through the line. And it came out and potentially should have won the race last week at 20s if it had sort of even luck. And, you know, given that there's speed inside as well, there's Blue Colours horse we'll talk about later where you don't want them up sort of inside lanes when there's a fast tempo. You want them just sort of sucking out the back, going standard and being able to sprint home.
She's an interesting runner. Dave, how are you approaching this one?
Yeah, it's an even bunch of fillies and mares, and I think I went looking for Miss Icelandic because Matt Laurie really well first up, and so I've got her price shorter than the market, and I know that she's on the drift at the moment, but it's going to be impossible to know by this time of the day, I think, whether the fence is off. But I'm keen to sort of have a look at her on the day and listen to what Aaron has to say about the yard. I actually sort of went looking for something to come from the back here, perhaps to my peril, because they won't have to go too hard in front. But I sort of landed on Jenny Pending, who I thought tried really nicely. She tried alongside, I said I don't watch trials, but I do sometimes. She tried alongside...
when you want to, when you're looking for a horse.
When I've already had the bet and I want to look for a reason to go again. Cheltenham Lane, she tried with him recently, and I thought it was a really nice trial. Now, she's going to want 1,400 metres later this prep, but I just thought I love the yard, and, you know, she could be the one running on with Kin and hopefully good enough. So I've had a sort of like a moderate bet on her, and I might look to sort of strengthen that with the 5 late on the day.
Okay. Mares, of course. 2,000 metres. This is an exposed race. Benchmark 78. And Trozza T is $4.80. Golden Crusader $5.50. Got to be Savvy is $7. Fagan $8.50. And there doesn't look to be a lot of speed, Aaron. I've got Golden Crusader from the 1. Gregor Limo and Test the Law, maybe? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'd be shocked if Golden Crusader doesn't lead. It'd probably just have to bomb the start, not to lead this. It led them up last start. Didn't get beat far behind, hard to cross. We've also referenced that was a meeting that you wanted to be up on speed, but it is going to be third up to 2,000 with, you know, no challenging sort of runners on the outside to sort of pester it. But yeah, it's a really strange one. We might have now got a reference point after the first 2 races with the wind and the rail where the leading as you go. If you're able to do that, it's probably pretty hard to beat, because we've also talked about it on occasions in the past, the 2,000 at Caulfield. The numbers are just through the roof when you're in the first 4 going around the bend, especially when the rail's out. That's the spot that you want to be. And a couple of the others, they're going to settle back. Tressetti, I thought they could definitely try and ride more forward from the gate. That was a really fast run race when it was third up to 2,000 their last start, and it was held up. It was jogging in behind them, held up as they went around the bend, and they were already going quick enough, but I think it could have gone quicker. And when it got out, gee, it sort of rattled to the line, and this is one that would really appreciate rain on day as well. So I think it's a pretty good chance. But look, there also have a couple of horses here where, you know, I also like Gregor Limo's taking up 10%. I'm not sure if it's still with us, so it might be a race to bet into.
Dave, question without notice. Do you sort of look for a particular profile when you see a course and a distance?
Depending on the course and distance, I do. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't have a huge inclination either way for Caulfield 2,000, but like if it was Caulfield 1,400, you know, I don't like getting back, going back from a wide gate, and probably Flemington 1,400, Sale 1,400, those sort of starts that are straight onto a bend. Here, most of the speed is drawn inside. There's nothing that's going to come from, you know, barrier 13 or 14 and force barrier one to really work to hold their spot. So I think Golden Crusader leads. I actually thought if there was no issue with leading on the day, I thought it was probably the bet in the race. But I totally agree with what Aaron said. The 4 Trossetti, I haven't got it settling like on pace, in the last sort of few starts, but it's drawn sort of so well that, if Golden Crusader kicks away, Picaroon holds the fence and it gets the drop pretty easily. They're the 2 for me. Look, I'm a little bit shorter than the market on the 5, and a little bit longer than the market on the 4, and so we'll just see on the day how I feel. I gave chances to Gotta Be Savvy and Fagan as well.
Hence you being longer in the market, longer than the market on number 4. All right, another 2,000 metre race, and this looks like they might have split these two, Aaron, is that right? So Desperado, back from Sydney, is $5. Torrenzino, 5. Jabberwockies, $5.50. Valley King at 7. And again, limited pace by the looks of it. Queen Air, I've got leading, and Maserati Bay coming across, but it does lose its blinkers, which I presume is by design. What are you thinking in terms of the map?
When Queen Air was leading, I'd go again on it. I'd be very hopeful that's the spot. That makes a lot of sense now that you've said that, Mark, about them splitting the race, because I was thinking to myself, why are they going back to 10 race cards? I thought that was done until lead up to spring, so that's solved that question for me. This is a really interesting one from the map. The 2 horses that have come up sort of equal favourites in the market, I don't think they're going to appreciate these barriers. I think they're the best horses in the race, but Desperado and Torrenzino especially, I think they're horses that really want clear air, time to sort of build up and sort of go through their gears. They don't really want to be stuck sort of inside horses they're not turn of foot horses.
Yeah, they don't want to be cluttered.
Don't want to be cluttered, and Torrenzino's got a really sort of a poor history of missing the start as well. So look, I think, it's probably the best horse in the race, Torrenzino, down in the weights, but it might be a really tricky position for it. Obviously giving that one away. I don't mind Queen Air at odds here. Mentioned it going into last start. I thought it was just bizarre that they were going from a mile to 2,500 third up when it raced. It was fourth up, but when it raced out of its skin there behind Matriarch Rose and sort of a flashing light, this horse might be back. I did think that there was a good chance they might go forward on it as well, because there was a race one day at might have been Moonee Valley about a year and a half ago where they chose to ride it positive, and they sat outside lead, and then it just sort of took off around the bend, and it's the biggest figure the horse has ever put up. So I was really hopeful that they ride it that way, and it's probably at a price where you can have something on it. Jabberwockies is a horse you could probably forgive its beaten margin there last start, settled too far back. You want it to be on speed. And from gate 1, going up in distance, maybe could be ridden more positively as well. But another really interesting race.
Dave, is this a race shape race?
I think it could be. I mean, blinkers off his side. Maserati Bay leads Vegas Night is what I was thinking. And Queen Air has had a history of being on the pace in previous runs. So that's it. There's not really a lot. I mean, nothing on the Jabberwockies maybe, but nothing really on the inside is going to say, hey, I want to force you to lead. So I've had a couple of passes at this race, and my first pass, I completely missed Torrenzino, and I sort of hated it. And then I was looking at horses like Desperado coming from Sydney and Valley King, looking for a reason to forgive it. And then I just decided I hated the race that Casual Connection won. Very slow race, and coming back in trip, I didn't like it for Desperado. I had a look at Jabberwockies because it's coming out of those form lines that are pretty sort of well regarded in this grade in Victoria at the moment. So the hard to cross form lines and things like that. Trossetti's in that line as well. But I thought Jabberwockies topped out at a mile, and I sort of felt that it wouldn't be the strongest late. So I sort of passed on it, and then I ended up back at Torrenzino and Valley King as sort of the main sort of horses of interest, with sort of questions on Schultze. Very unfashionable trainer, but a competitive rating at these weights at 1,700 last start. And I thought maybe you could spec Schultze And finally, just very wary of a horse like Vegas Night. Nick Ryan runner on the backup last start and was 26 in 16 and now comes up again 2 weeks later and already backed. That just worries me a little bit. But yeah, 13.
Well, it sounds a vexing race. But how do you feel about races where you reluctantly return to a horse that you've initially given the cross to?
Yeah, I mean, I think I gave it the cross on the first pass because I didn't look closely enough. If you go and look at Torrenzino's 12 months ago, this time of year, and particularly on dead or worse tracks over the middle distance range, the horse doesn't get warm until sort of 1800. It hit its straps and had 3 really good runs, and those ratings for me would win this race. And so I had to consider it then.
So you sort of like the least worst horse.
Yeah, and so look, it's not going to be a big betting race for me. I probably could have something small on it and the Paddy Payne horse.
All right, let's get back to the sprint course.
I'll quickly ask you, Mark, because I was thinking about this Desperado. It's funny that Dave's mentioned that. Yeah, I agree. Torrenzino is an out-and-out winter 2,000 metre horse, but Desperado, if you're assessing it on the Melbourne runs, and it didn't draw 2, you're just about declare it, really. Beating Berkshire Breeze home and then finishing a couple of lengths behind See What I See. I think that horse has gone on to win a Group 2 in Adelaide since. But that last run, was it just too slowly run and maybe 24 is a stretch?
Well, look, my position on slowly run races is it just doesn't tell you much.
Yeah.
I'd prefer that horses didn't come out of slowly run races because I don't think that's a good platform, but also it just means it's just not a proper race. And so what do
you take from it?
Yeah, it's a bit of a
wet dry as well,
It's a curate's egg, I would describe it as. Race 5 is back at the sprint course, 1,200 metres, fillies, and Shiva is $4.80, Enna's Dream $5.50, Bossy Nick $6, Paradise City and Unconquerable at $9. No one knows where Yankee 1 is going yet. Map-wise, we've got a bit of action by the looks of it. Paradise City from 1, Diamond Decorator with the blinkers on from 4, and Romantic Choice out wider. Are you expecting a pressure race, Aaron?
I expect there's probably a clash for the lead. Diamond Decorator going blinkers first time. It's a fast enough horse early as it is. So given that there's a horse that in Paradise City, its chance to win a race like this would be to lead. If the other factors that we talked about, the Sailor Show only in play, and you've got Romantic Choice, which probably wants to come across as well. I'd expect they probably just tuck behind with Unconquerable. This was the most interesting jockey switch of the meeting for me. Unconquerable. It was one of the biggest pushes of all time on debut. Unconquerable from the Price Yard. They flew Damien Lane back from Perth to ride this thing on a Thursday night twilight meeting, and Nick Price is there legging him up in the yard at 4:30 when he's got to get up at 3 o'clock the next morning. So there was a big opinion about this horse. They tipped it out straight away, brought it back. Lane rode it last start. Sort of got its mouth open a little bit. They've chucked the crossover nose and straight on. And then he's jumped off, given all the spruik about the horse, and he's jumped on Bossy Nick, which he's never ridden in the past. So I thought that was the most
interesting. What weight is he riding at through winter? I mean, the horse does have 54.
He rode 54 on LU 2 weeks ago. Yeah. But I remember we talked about this, he wasn't the declared rider when we did the show as well, so maybe he was waiting on whether he could get the weight or not. But if you had a real opinion, I reckon he'd get down to it. Shiva, current favourites, jumped out really well first up. Very sticky gate though.
Where do you expect to see her?
Well, I thought he'd probably try and tuck in the 3 wide running line position. I don't think it's got enough speed to sort of come across and challenge, and some of its best races in the past have been sort of where it's just sort of tucked in off the speed or sort of on speed better than midfield. Enna's Dream, interesting horse. First up, super, probably wins the race if it's not held up. Then goes to 1,400 second up when it was coming off a reasonably long spell.
Over-raced?
Yeah, a little bit, and just sort of peaked on its run, and maybe having a month off, coming back slightly in distance might work. I know it's gone gate 14, but the shoot start when there's a little bit of speed drawn outside that you might be able to tag and come across with them, it's probably a chance. But yeah, this is a really open race.
What about you, Dave? How are you seeing this?
Yeah, look, I've got sort of four horses of interest, and it's going to depend on the day. So I've got Shiva and Anna's Dream, the best form in the race, but the worst gates in the race. Well, potentially the worst gates. If that turns out to be an advantage, then that's where I want to sort of focus my percentage in my market. I thought Unconquerable on face value has drawn well. And it has the rating 2 starts ago, looks very competitive. And so I was interested in that early, and I was interested in Yankee 1 if she runs here early. And so I've backed Yankee 1 early. Doesn't have the best form or best ratings, but it sort of had a profile that I thought could be competitive if the top 2 are disadvantaged. And so that's the position I took early. On the day, I'll have a look at the 2, what I think are the 2 best horses in the race, and make an assessment on whether I need to back them.
Okay, so the race is open in that sense. There is the queries over the best form.
Sure.
All right, let's move on to the back half, which is again at the 1200 benchmark 84, and here we have Barraquil at $3.80, the Open at $5.50, Jewelry at $8, Pioneer River is into double figures, and I've got speed in the middle here from the favourite Barraquil and Why Worry, bits and pieces underneath, and not a lot outside. What are you thinking, Aaron?
I thought Barraquil would definitely lead this race. I don't think they want to take a sit behind Why Worry, again, as long as leading's okay. But Why Worry sort of had that race handed to it last start. It was a really slowly run race early, clicked up 8-4, and then went, a couple of lengths above standard late. That's the perfect way to ride a horse first up on a 2.5 track speed deck, isn't it? When it fell in, I don't think they could have got any more out of that horse. So I expect Barraquil's potentially stakes rate horse in some time, I think. So if they're here, they've come to a Saturday race first prep. They're having a crack, and I think they'll lead. This has been an ultra impressive horse. We've followed this one from the jump outs all the way through. I guess if you try and play devil's advocate, not only is it going from sort of out wide to Saturday first time, the second horse, Brung King, which it brained and it did really good figures and it was eased up late. Second horse, Brung King, is a dead set wetty, and that was a good track. So it really didn't beat much last start. So I think the 3.5 margin win is slightly flattered, but I think it can easily measure up to Saturday grade. Like, you've got the Opens obviously flying. It's coming back in distance and dropping a little bit of weight. Proven lines. It could get a nice sort of tuck in right behind Barraquil as well. And it's quite a tough horse. So if Barraquil and the ex-Hong Kong horse happen to overdo it, it's probably better suited, being slightly back in distance, being tough late. Another one which is drawn really poor is Extra 2, which I think is going to appreciate coming back to the 1200. I don't think the 1400 metre runs have been anywhere close to its best. I think it's much sharper over the 1200. I mean, it was in a group race 2 starts ago, beating a length, at a $4 SP, and now we're in a 84 at, $15. So it probably is the one that's over the odds at the moment as well.
Interesting favourite, Dave, because whilst she does appear to have let down nicely, she does also appear to have had, well, he also appears to have had fairly comfortable time in the front half.
For sure. Look, after its second start, I sort of said to a group in my chat, I said, just be careful where they place this horse. If they go too high too quickly, I think we can be against it. They placed it in a really beautiful race for it last start, and it ran really well. But for me, it didn't rate much higher, if anything, than the second start. And so it's come up short here on the numbers. Now, it's probably questionable whether the horse has been bottomed out yet. It almost certainly hasn't. But for me, just the way this race shapes up, I'd much rather be with the Open. I think, like, it's got the A form. It's got great form lines, and the ratings are top notch, and it's drawn, you know, really well, I think, as well. So the Open for me, I'll be marking it favourite. And I don't think it's not a moral. I think, you know, Pioneer River is starting to creep back towards some of its older form. Jewellery, you know, her last start run was competitive here, and so they're the horses, and you can never count Extra 2 out, even though I'm not really with it here. Other than that, there's a lot of numbers in the race, and so I'm looking to get the 15 beaten.
Okay, yeah, it is clearly a key favourite, and a favourite that sort of my eyes light up when I see this style of horse, because you know, it's clearly got some sort of boom on it, and yeah, it's going to have a question asked of it here. So it's certainly a good yardstick for the horse. Race 7 is over the 1440, 1440 because the rail's out so far, I guess. Miss Rumbini, $3.80, Electrona, $5, Valois, $7.50. The horse is in single figures. And Triple Vision, the roughie I had showing out with bits of speed underneath. What is it, the leader or something else, Aaron?
I thought the way that Electrona sort of over raced and was keen, sort of resenting being ridden back in the field last start, as much as it won, it's been ridden on speed leading or settling in the first couple in the past. So I thought from the inside gate, sort of gate 4, that they would try and lead. Il Cubo is on a quick backup, one last Sunday when he was able to lead, and you know, he wasn't really challenged, so they might have a crack from the wide gate as well. I don't think they really want to sit sort of outside the lead, so I think they're your most likely to speed influence in the race, which I thought this was a pretty low race. Miss Rubini, the favourite, looks to get a really nice run from 3, just tucking in regardless of what happens with the early speed. It was a really good win, and it was hammered in betting late last start. It was one of the biggest plunges for a while late, and it just destroyed them, especially sort of the way that the track pattern was on the day. Now gets third up to the 1400, and it all sort of looks right for it. It's a pretty weak race. I mean, Regal Might is one I'd have a second look at if it was able to get a run, which is an emergency at a big price. I thought it was pretty good behind Title Fighter. First up, it's much stronger form than most of these are coming through, and then was okay there at Seymour. Now gets third up. So another one I'd look at, but yeah, I do think the favourite's probably pretty hard to beat.
Situation, Dave, where most of the action betting wise is drawn comfortably enough. You've referenced the fact that 1400 straight onto a bend is a distance at this sort of track where you certainly don't want to be on a map negative horse.
Yeah, for sure. Look, a little bit like Aaron, like I'm not jumping up and doing cartwheels over the favourite, but like its last start rating was good. It's, you know, it's well regarded in the market, and it's drawn well enough to be midfield or slightly forward of, and not too, you know, not caught too wide. I thought Electrona, whilst it's a bit of a jumping grade for it, it's not a massive jump. 3-odd handicaps can vary, and it's only from a 64 where it was a solid favourite. So I thought it was drawn the best in the race, and probably was the horse to hone in on. That said, I thought Valois was a touch of overs early, and I got a little bit of that. So I'd say the 12 and the 3 for me.
It's an interesting draw for this favourite, really, when you consider that she's shown her wares on a couple of occasions, you know, just sitting back from wide gates.
Drawn wide, yeah. But it's just not going to be the spot to be, I think, the way that the track's going to play, and especially when there's just no speed, really, that you can't afford to be too far back in this race, I think.
Yeah, look, go on, Dave.
Sorry, mate. There's one out wide. Like, I guess first, I'm definitely not saying that out wide's not the place to be at this stage. Like, you never know. They do get a bit of rain. You know, we could end up saying, hey, that's where we want to be. There's a horse out wide that if he'd run well first up after being gelded, so Namesake, I would have been keen here, the draw aside. But he ran terribly first up, and so, but I'm watching it because past ratings are like easily good enough to win this race, and it's easily double figures. So just keep your eye on Namesake and see if you bounce back.
Does seem like the sort of race you can be easily, well, hidden that, down the straight at 1100. It seems quite a different race here.
It does.
Race 8. Well, speaking of the short course, here it is, 1,000 metres, open 3-year-old race, and Fleetwood off his stellar returns in Sydney as a gelding is $2.80. Lee Parain is $7. Get Along $7.50. There's your single figures. I've got Whistlefield, our Crackle and Rosie, Bonds to Reaches, Get Along out wide, and Spicy Margs is the widest. Is this a charge, Aaron?
Oh, it is a fast tempo. Yeah, I thought our Crackle and Rosie on its day can be a pretty fast horse early, drawn 3. Whistlefield might want to tuck in behind it. Look, I think he'll ride it positive with 60 kilos lane. I don't think he wants to be,
That's the favourite you're talking about.
Yeah, Fleetwood. I don't think he wants to be 3 back as well. I think he'd like to be leaders back. And it sort of showed, look, if we get the rain during the card, I think the way that it sort of hugged the fence and went to the inferior lane and still won last start, it can clearly handle if the inside is potentially off. But I wouldn't want it getting too far back with 60 kilos. And I mentioned at the start, blue horses, when there's speed on and they're forced to settle on speed, it's not really a spot I like taking. Get Along's first up. It's trialled really well. It's virtually been untouched in its trials, and it's just pinged and showed a lot of speed. So expect they wanted to have a crack and go forward as well. Spicy Margs, I don't know what's happened to the horse, but it's got...
I think she maybe never was.
Maybe you're right. It's got a lot of speed, but even a few that have drawn out with them as well, I expect they want to come across and find a forward and midfield position. So, look, you might be looking for one that just gets a really nice stalk in behind and has shown in the past that it's able to sort of peel and go off hot tempos. It puts Le Parain in the race a little bit. Back around a bend, I think it's much more suitable for it. Title Fighter's had 2 complete flops down the straight, and if you were able to pen those runs, you wouldn't have it anywhere near this price. I think it's clearly shown in these sort of style of races where there's been a lot of speed on. It's been able to sort of rip and go, and it's drawn 8, so it's not going to have to do much work to find one of those spots. It seems a pretty big price to me, but I think this is a race where you can make casing points for a lot at odds, but the most likely scenario is, for a lot of people, is do you back Fleetwood or not? And I think you really need to pay close attention to the 3 races leading up to this to sort of decide if you do.
Dave, fascinating favourite. How do you position him?
Look, it just looks like the money's already in the back pocket, doesn't it? These sort of ones, and it's not always the case. Like I really liked it in Sydney, and and it was it $7 or something there? It was a bit longer.
Well, it was there. It was pretty firm late, but
7 into 550 or something. And look, I think it's the horse to beat. Do I want to take what is it currently, $2.60 drawn the fence? I definitely couldn't take it before race 6 on the day. So, but I really do think it's the horse to beat. But I give chances to a horse like Get Along. Not sure about Hawks. Is it Hawks first up? Not 100% sure, but I think that horse has a future. And the other one was Le Parain. I thought was a good chance. So, look, I can't really back against Fleetwood, and I'm not sure if I can back it yet. But yeah, it's the one to beat.
So just on that, with like Fleetwood being overbet early, given the sort of lack of information we've got about the track conditions at the moment, geez, have you gone through Lane's numbers lately? He's just been so overbet, and he's clearly, if you had a horse in any race on Saturday, you'd go to him and want him on. But I think he's won 3 of his last 60 rides. And the interesting thing was, when I was having a bit of a dive through his figures, sort of last 100 this season, he's losing at about 28% at Caulfield, by far his worst track. But he was losing a similar amount last year, like when he was flying. Caulfield just wasn't his track. So I don't know if the horses are, because that was proportional staking, I don't know if the horses are overbet, or potentially maybe his style isn't as suitable at Caulfield for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, particularly last 50, he's like 0.3, wins over expectations. So, one's neutral. That's as bad as it gets for a jockey like him. So, but last 12 months, he's actually winning more than expectations. So, small number bias and that sort of stuff.
Correct.
It is a problem with the small sample, isn't it? I often wonder what the jockeys think when they hear the experts talk about, how they're going, what they're doing.
He'll come Melbourne Ride 6 now. I've brought that up.
But I mean, they must get into some sort of groove of just not really caring. That they push them around every day, and I imagine they're quite philosophical.
Especially someone at his level. Yeah.
That's the 8th. So let's get back up to the journey of 2,000 meters. This is an open handicap, and Vegeta Sand $4 or $5, Milford 6, Pounding 650. We've got Pounding and Dashing Wider out to contest the lead. Does that sound right?
Well, Dashing has won when it's led this prep, and if it hasn't led, it just runs an honest sort of placing. So he can be a pretty aggressive rider when he wants to be. Knew it from 11. So potentially a leader. I thought Alhambra 11 from the inside's also another one that, as much as it's probably well short of its best, if they're fair dinkum, they might go forward as well. Vegeta Sand, it's been really impressive its last couple. As much as got beat 2.5 lengths there start prior. It was a really fast run race, and it had a really strong turn of foot late, but coming out of 15, and it's only had a couple of runs sort of outside that 84 class, and it's failed every time. Milford, on the other hand, has come back super. It really showed the second up run wasn't a fluke. Some of the form through the race has been good, but what it did behind Virtuous Circle when it was held up, it wouldn't have beat Virtuous Circle, but it would have got really close. And I've always sort of thought this horse prefers to be on top of the ground. But if you go back to the same stage of prep, this almost to the day last year, it was third up track and trip. We got rain just sort of leading up to that. It's a couple of races leading up to that. The inside was complete cactus. He raced on the inside, took over, Normandy Bridge nailed it late, and then was fourth up, as it is on Saturday at 2,000, and just got nutted in a photo behind Young Werder.
It's the same race, isn't it? So this race last year.
Potentially, yeah. It was it actually. It was at Caulfield, wasn't it? Look, I can't believe they put up 850. The price has been knocked in now, but it's clearly shown that wasn't a fluke when it won at odds there a couple of starts ago. But Pounding probably getting to the right stage of the prep as well. I think it's fit. It's a reasonably tough horse when they elect to go forward with it. I don't think they want too much rain around when sort of the rains come. They've been by far its worst run. So if it's no worse than a 5, I'd expect it's probably right in the race as well. Even a horse like Red Sun Sensation, which comes through that race, the Milford Virtuous Circle, it was one of the only ones that was sort of from that settling position and was still there late. It only got beat a couple of lengths, and that was largely in the last 50 metres. But I thought it was a really tough run there, third up. Now gets fourth up, staying at the distance. It's probably another one at odds you can have a look at.
Yeah, look, this favourite, Dave, Vegeta Sand, instantly I look at, 14 days, and then all of a sudden 28 days. Does that strike fear into your heart, that style of preparation?
If I was thinking of backing it, it certainly would. Definitely not something I'm keen on here. I can't imagine this horse stringing a picket fence together. And so I just have to go around it. And look, the rating was all right last start. Like Aaron said, it was a fast race. That was that the 1st of June? That was the day where they had those big tailwinds from the southeast at Caulfield. And so if you were the leader overdid it and you were running on there with the breeze behind you, I thought that was probably an advantage for it. I was wondering what Aaron would say about Red Sun Sensation, because we reviewed a program recently and Aaron said that he was going to market a horse to sort of cautiously follow, and it gets the blinkers back on here. Perhaps slightly unfashionable jockey in Will Price, but it's $18. Does it go forward with the blinkers on?
I'd expect so after how tough it was last start. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that's a pretty easy sort of spec in the race. I didn't know where to look everywhere else. I thought, nearly everything had a run in this distance range at the right stage of their preps that could win, and that just makes me feel like it's, maybe a $7 or $8 a field sort of race.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that analysis is sound in this situation. Well, the nightcap is over the 1440, and Chorlton Lane, a horse that was referenced earlier, is $2.80. St Lawrence 6, Rheinberg 650, hasn't got a run yet, or has it? And he's our Bonneville at $9. Georgie got Get Mad in 2, and then we've got Edison out wide with Rheinberg. What are you expecting, Aaron?
The map could sort of turn on its head. Georgie Get Mad's third emergency. We've just had one come through, get scratched, so it's 2 away from getting a start. If it doesn't get a start, there's not much speed in the race, and I had a small chance that Edison might do something funny like it did 2 starts back. Ball just goes to the front, no tempo. Maybe it gets away with something and it's some sort of a chance.
Well, I think particularly if they are getting wide, they do tend to sort of wait, don't they?
Yeah, and like we said, that can just suck so much pace out of the race. Look, the 2 horses to beat are clearly Chorlton Lane and St Lawrence. Chorlton Lane, I think, could be slightly more map positive from 5 third up. It was slightly more forward than it was first up last time in. Got held up at a key stage, still able to win. I don't know if you can say it's third up going up in distance.
Well, there was 56 days off. Something must have happened, surely.
Well, it's had the trial since. Maybe they just wanted certain track conditions or to find a certain race. But I think it has raced well in the past when it's had to gap between runs.
They are a stable that does like to space runs.
Yeah, correct.
Not this much, but
no. And then St Lawrence coming through the same stable. Well, it was ultra disappointing last start. The figure's still good, although it was a blanket finish. But at the 400, you're just thinking how far, and it just didn't let down. And I know a lot of people have chucked it in the bin off that run, but just going back through its runs, it's had 3. I suppose you call them failures when you consider the market expectation. And all 3 of them have been on these firm concrete 2.9 tracks. It's not going to get that on Saturday, and it's going to carry 51 kilos. So, yeah.
Just the jockey, Aaron. He's he's now on a number of horses you both have mentioned. Where do you stand with him?
Well, he's not one you look for on Saturday, but one of the better 3 kilo claiming apprentices at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, well, what more do you expect for a 3 kilo claimer? I mean, he's clearly can sit on the horse. Yeah, I'm neutral.
It shouldn't be too hard of a steer from 1 as well. Like this horse, if they really wanted to, could potentially even lead. So I expect they're just positive out of the gates, try and tuck in behind lead or at worst 3 back rails. And, the run will present on the inside, so it shouldn't be too difficult to steer.
Okay, Dave, take us out.
Yeah, look, after saying that I'm neutral on the jockey, I'm not really neutral on the horse. Like I think the rating for St Lawrence is perhaps a touch flattering with such a lightweight today on Saturday, and so I'm very greyed up on it. I had this spruik early, and I was keen to be against it early, and it was very short, and it did win, but it never really did anything to say, hey, I'm an open class horse or a stakes grade horse. And so, here he's up against a horse like Chorlton Lane that came as an international and, immediately said, hey, I'm a good horse. Rheinberg's a solid sort of Saturday grade horse, so risque. There's a lot of those sort of, if there was a dogfight at the end of this race, is St Lawrence going to be the one that puts his nose in front? And I really don't know. So
it seemed like a soft horse to me last preparation. I mean, I know we spent a lot of Melbourne previews talking about St Lawrence, certainly like 9 to 12 months ago.
Yeah.
And
distance though, it went up in distance ever since, and it's just not won a race since.
Yeah, I mean, it's with, is it Tamar, isn't it? Yeah, it's with the
Yes.
right yard. I mean, you couldn't rule anything out, but at the same, coming the last race at Caulfield, are you gonna, like, it's 550. If it stays that price, what price do you have to have marked it? $4 ish to be saying, hey, I'm going to have a good bet on this. I can't do it. I think I'm happy to let it go around. And Chorlton Lane is another one that I think, look, it could be a moral Chorlton Lane, to be honest, if turns out to be in the right spot on the day, and it's still around that 250, I could back it for sure.
All right, so that's a favourite of Focus.
Gord will be backing it.
Yeah.
I can hear Gord.
He does. He does like. He does.
He
He's a bit of a fan of the horse.
Well,
Right, so
he thinks it's stakes grade horse. Yeah.
I'm
well,
disappointed.
he's lurking.
I only got to one moral, and I was told the line was 5.5. So
Yeah.
Well, before we get to that, I just mentioned that Aaron has obviously, given a brief overview of the card. But if you actually want Aaron's assessments and his early bets and his later bets and his mounting yard, and to have access to someone that's actually on the ground at Caulfield, then you need to be a Melbourne Pro subscriber. So just click on that eye. It'll take you down below the video, and you'll be presented with a card to take you to the subscription page for the Melbourne Pro Punter. And you should check out Dave on Twitter because, that's where most of the racing action is. So you can find him at Dave P Band. Is that right?
correct. Yep.
That's DAVEPBAND. So, you'll certainly enjoy his Twitter musings because they're thoughtful, if nothing else. So thanks for coming on the show today, Dave. Were there races of particular focus for you on the card?
Yeah, look, I've got a few early positions. So I think I said Jenny Pending. The Open I thought was the best bet on the program. And Yankee One was another horse, if she runs, I'm interested in. So they're at odds. Specs, I'd say Red Sun Sensation, and I would be really keen to look at Chorlton Lane in the last.
Wow. What a good guest. Thank you for coming on. We hope to see you again soon. You've been watching the Melbourne preview for Caulfield. We've got eagle eyes on rainfall on the day. So that's be mindful of that. And as I say, Aaron will be on course there. If you're in the channel,